What's up, everybody, and welcome to the How To Hero YouTube channel. My name's Sean, and the channel's going in a different direction. It's going somewhere where I didn't really ever intend it to go, but you know what? Exciting new changes, exciting new beginnings. I appreciate everybody that's been subscribed as long as they have. The channel's been around for a little while, but the content's gonna adjust. And so if what I'm talking about today doesn't interest you, I'd definitely recommend unsubscribing. As much as I appreciate you being here, you're not going to like the rest of the stuff I do. With that said, I'll just get right into the content. But I just wanted to also say that the new focus of the channel is really going to be on self-improvement, self-development, personal growth, and really trying to get the most out of your life in various different ways. I'll talk about a little bit about career, a little bit about work, a little bit about really everything. So if that's what you're into, cool. Stick around and let's get into the video. What is an empath? Are you an empath? And how do you deal with that? So I guess a little bit about me. For many years, I've been just intuitive by nature. I've understood what people want. I've understood what they think. I've understood how they felt. I never had any idea how to explain this other than I just assumed I was good at reading people. I just assumed that, I just had some type of skill that was kind of innate to me. I knew that I was better at it than almost everyone I ever met. But I never understood how that worked or anything like that. So an empath is someone who essentially can pick up the energy of people around them. So some empaths pick it up kind of like me, where it's just kind of intuitive. They just kind of know without really understanding how they know. They just kind of pick it up. They just get it. When you're in a conversation with somebody, or when I'm in a conversation with somebody, and they start to tell me about their life experiences, they start to tell me about something they're thinking. Before they're even done talking, I'm already like, yeah, I know what you're saying. Let's just stop, because I get it. But of course, because society doesn't really want me to do that, I sit politely and I listen, at least as best as I can. A lot of times I want to get in there. I'm like, yeah, I know what you're saying. Let's just stop. Let me say my thing so that we can make this productive, because I feel like we're just wasting time. And so that's my side of it. It's very, very, it can be unique to individuals. So empathic individuals, sometimes they'll just be sitting there and they'll kind of feel like, the energy's off. Something's off in this room. Something's off in the place I'm at. Maybe they're at a Tim Hortons or a Starbucks or something like that. And they're thinking, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but there's something happening here and I don't like it. Or alternatively to that, there's something happening here and I love it. So it can go kind of both ways. And it can also be very neutral. A lot of times empaths have what are basically difficulties understanding what is theirs and what is somebody else's. So someone like me who's intuitive, if I, as a child, would hang around the same people for too long, I would just pick up all of their mannerisms. I'd pick up their ways of speech. Everybody does this to a degree, but empaths tend to do it a little bit more, I think, on the intuitive side. So the simplest way to explain it is an empath is somebody who feels empathy. They can put themselves in the other person's experience and they can really, truly feel how they feel. And it's not a cognitive empathy. It's not an intellectual empathy. It's not an exercise where they think about placing themselves in that position and how that position would make them feel. The idea is that they actually feel how that person feels. And so with that, it causes some discomfort. It causes some distress. But at the same time, it's a great skill to have. It's a great thing to be able to do. And I think that my theory is that all humans are capable of this, unless they have some type of malfunction. But all humans are capable of doing this type of behavior. However, a lot of people just kind of tune it out. Either that, or they just kind of were not as innately able and didn't practice it. A lot of children kind of practice intuition just very, very, just naturally. They do things because they just feel like it. They work a lot out of their heart instead of their mind. That's the way I can describe it. Your gut feelings, your intuition, your heart, whatever you want to call it. But when you feel like doing something, as opposed to thinking about, I want to go do this thing, that's what I'm referring to. So children work out of that space, and they tend to develop that. Then as they get older and they start to need to focus on other things, they start to get more into their intellectual mind. And depending on the child and depending on how they're raised and everything like that, it can have a big influence on their empathic traits later and the sensitivities later. And so for me, I wasn't very sensitive at first, or as I turned into an adult, I should say. As a kid, I was too sensitive. I basically, I just saw masks everywhere. I saw people lying everywhere. I saw that teachers, parents, my sisters, my entire family, everybody that I met was fake. They were fooling themselves, and they were trying to fool me, and they're trying to fool each other. And so for that, what that taught me was that I needed to be a chameleon. So in order for me to get by in the world, I had to just pretend. I had to pretend all the time. I had to just do whatever it was that was necessary in the moment to kind of achieve whatever my goal was, which typically for me was just to coast. I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I didn't want to rock the boat. Really, as a younger kid, as I got older, that changed. But as a younger kid, I just wanted to, path of least resistance type thing. Whatever would work. So if I saw that teachers would get excited about me reading, I would just dive into reading. And everyone would praise me, and I'm like, yeah, reading's awesome. Even though I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as I let on. And I'm really glad for all that experience because, I read a lot of interesting books and things like that. But ultimately, I was what I call chameleon mode. I don't know if I may have stole that from a book somewhere, chameleon mode. But basically, I would migrate from groups of friends. And I did this throughout my whole life, really. I migrate from group to group to group to group. And I just kind of blend into the group and do and think the way that they think. And in doing that, you lose your own identity, right? You lose your own concept of what you believe yourself. You start to get confused about what you even think because you lose track of that. And so one of the things that I struggled with was trying to be like, okay, well, what does Sean actually think? What do I care about? And that led me down a path of stoicism and meditation and other things like that. But that was way before I even knew I was an empath. The first time I stumbled across the term empath, I started to read about it. I'm like, this sounds like me, but it also sounds like hocus pocus. It sounds like nonsense. There wasn't a lot of science yet when I first saw the term. So I basically disregarded it. I assumed that, maybe there's something there, but just science wasn't really explaining it in a way that made sense to me. I've always been very analytical. I need a little bit of proof. So some of the science around it. The first thing that really tipped me off was honestly, maybe, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago, I found out about mirror neurons. And essentially, other people can explain this way better than I can. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just an IT guy, nerd, who has many, many different curiosities. But essentially, mirror neurons are neurons that fire in one animal, specifically animals. So they're in like birds, they're in primates. They are theorized to be in humans as well, but they haven't been directly observed in humans yet. So they've been directly observed in primates, but the idea is that essentially the neuron fires here at, animal A, and then animal B immediately fires the same neuron, or the same cluster of neurons. I'm not sure exactly how that is, but essentially they fire at the same time and they kind of mirror each other. And that's one of the theories around how the empathy works and how the feeling what other people feel, the whole concept of that comes into play. And it starts to lend questions around, how do the neurons even engage with each other? How are they aware of it? Is it, because it happens, the way I understand it is it happens prior to processing. So it's not necessarily the optical processing that causes you to see something happening and then the neurons fire. It's like the neuron fires, and then you see. So at least that's how I understood it. And if anybody knows any more about that, correct me if I'm wrong. But the first book that I really started to dive into on this was, I was like, you know what, this makes some sense. I need to learn because it sounds like me, and it sounds like it explains a lot about my life. So I started diving into Dr. Judith Orloff's The Empath Survival Guide. I'll have links down below. Just a note as well, any links that I put to Amazon or anything like that are probably affiliate links, and they're just intended to help the channel. So if you purchase through there, you are helping me and the channel. So just be aware of that. But basically, I started reading that book, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Dr. Orloff's she's a clinical psychiatrist. She, I believe, is on the UCLA clinical faculty. Now, I could be wrong, but she's basically been researching this her whole life, more or less. And she's wrote a few books on similar subjects, talking about different things. But the Empath Survival Guide is the one that really connected with me. It helped me to understand how I need to kind of act within the world. It helped me to understand. Oh, hey, puppy. My dog's trying to get in. He's trying to get in the window. He can't get in that window. I think he just found out that he can see me down here. Well, that's okay. I'll go get him soon. So the question starts to be, are you an empath? And I mean, really, if anything that I was saying up until now resonates, if you've seen these experiences, if you've had these kind of issues growing up, if you've been kind of told that you're maybe an old soul, or that you're aged beyond your years, things like that, they tend to be indicative of empaths, because what happens is the empath tends to understand where people are coming from so quickly that when they're children and talking to an adult, the adult thinks, there's no way you understand me, yet you clearly understand me. So what's happened there? You must be some kind of wise old soul. And they try to rationalize it that way because they don't really know how to explain it. They'll often be considered, intelligent, gifted in some cases. You can be introverted or extroverted. It doesn't mean you have to be out there, kind of like I'm an extrovert. So, if I go into an area with people, I'll start talking to strangers and I'll start bringing them into my thing and turning it into a bit of a party, a bit of a show. I enjoy it. I like just being in the mix of things. I do occasionally like to just kind of people watch as well. So I can be quiet. I can be on the borders and kind of look in. But I prefer to be right in the mix, and I prefer to be kind of like almost leading whatever's going on. Whether it's a corporate thing like at work, or if it's a social thing, I like to be the one who helps to lead the group into whatever it is that we want to do. And that tends to be me. But like I said, just because people are, if you're an empath, it doesn't mean you have to be any particular way. It just means that you're much more in tune with how other people feel. And you may or may not be able to explain that sometimes. Sometimes you'll go into a place and you'll just be like, this place sucks. And you don't even know why. You don't know why it sucks. It just sucks. Other people are even more sensitive, and they go, this place sucks because that guy over there is just stewing on something. I don't know what his problem is, but he needs to leave, or, feel like that. Or they'll feel that they need to leave, which is more likely the case. Empaths, because they're so aware of how other people feel, they tend to be very compassionate. They tend to be very caring. They tend to because they understand the feeling very, very real. It's very real to them. They can be very compassionate and very empathetic to people's situations, and sympathetic as well, right? So they don't tend to they may get very frustrated by it because it can be really difficult. I mean, if you can imagine, you walk into areas and you're trying to just, go through the mall. So for me, the mall is a crazy place. The mall is bonkers. There's a mall nearby and it's always busy. And I go there on occasion to just walk through it and basically practice being in the discomfort of the sensory overload. I used to think it was the lights and stuff. But no, it's. I found out now that it's not the lights, it's the people. There's so many different energies of people running around in there. Some people are just pissed, some are so happy. There's kids, there's old people that are miserable, and old people that are happy, and it's just all this. It's like a melting pot of just emotion. So for me, I like to go there. I've always avoided the mall. Always. I hated the mall. And I could never really explain why. I'm okay in crowds, providing the crowds are like let's say I go to a concert, because everybody's focused in on the band or artist, whatever, and they tend to be there out of like they wanted to be there, right? They wanted to engage in that, and they enjoy it. So everybody's mood starts to rise. The energy in the room becomes just this. Like it's a bliss almost, like I don't know how to describe it. It's just joyous generally. Even at like heavy metal, and heavy metal is some of the most music I listen to. In fact, lately anyways, I listen to pretty much everything, but it kind of depends on my mood. So if any of that resonates with you, you might be an empath. I highly recommend Judith Orloff's book. There's also another book that I looked into after that, which once I read Judith's, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm an empath. Then I found Sidney Campos, who wrote The Empath Experience, What to Do When You Feel Everything. So now that I knew I'm an empath, now I'm like, okay, now I want to hone this. I want this is obviously a superpower. I want to make this as strong as I can make it. I want to invite all of the feeling in and figure out how to deal with it because it can be uncomfortable, which I've said a few times. And she wrote The Empath Experience, which I'll have a link below. And essentially, reading that book, I was floored. It felt like I wrote it myself. She's, I don't know too much about her in general, other than everything that she was saying. I think that actually may have been where I got the chameleon idea from. But everything she was saying just made perfect sense to me. It was so bang on with my entire life experience that I found myself at sometimes just like crying. While I'm listening to it, because I was listening to an audiobook, but while I'm listening to it, I was crying, and I'm like, I'm not a super big crier, so it's odd for me to just start crying, but it was a mixture of these emotions of like sadness, but also like joy of finding like somebody else that went through exactly kind of the same experience as me. And just, being like, oh my God, my entire life, I felt like I was alone. I had all these people around me that loved me, but I felt alone. I felt like there was nothing I could do to be with people. People weren't on the same page as me, ever. And most of them still aren't. So, but that's neither here nor there. So just to read this stuff that she was saying, it just resonated at such a degree that I couldn't even handle it. I basically listened to the whole thing, front to back, I think twice in a row almost. I don't think I even slept. I just kept listening to it, and it changed my life, honestly, that book. And towards the end of the book, she does get a little salesy because she has retreats and she has these things that she runs, and they, I think, have a lot of value for some people. Basically, I've looked into those a little bit to kind of see what she's doing, and it looks really interesting. So, take that for what it's worth, but just be aware there is some, kind of salesy stuff towards the end. Really, she focuses on helping entrepreneurs spread their message. I believe is her focus. So, but either way, I'll put some links below. You can check out her stuff, see what she's up to, see what Dr. Orloff's up to, that type of thing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my awakening, my empathic, I'll call it a reawakening. So my empathic abilities or traits or whatever sensitivities, they were there from the beginning. They didn't really ever go away. But I kind of didn't really think about it like that. So I didn't think of it as a skill I could practice, because I knew things without understanding how I knew things. I didn't think of any way to practice that. How do you practice something that you don't really even know? Right? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So, but when after I read these books, I'm like, okay, these are actual. There's things I can do here to not only engage with all this information and all this all these things that are happening, but also I can tailor things to help me do it better. And so that's what I started trying to do. And so I started basically reading people. I would go to bars, I'd go to coffee shops, and I would just chat with people, and then I would just tell them about their life. I'd tell them about experiences that they had. I would tell them about things that they did that they didn't tell me. Like, they didn't mention these things to me. And I couldn't get super specific, usually. Sometimes I got weirdly specific, but most of the time it was pretty general. So it could be said that, maybe it's some type of confirmation bias or something like that. And I'm aware of these things as well. So, but for me, it was too much accuracy to be coincidental. And so as I kept doing that, I'm like, you know what, this is incredible. And now I need to share it with people. And that's where the how-to hero stuff started to come into play. So I've always wanted to make content on YouTube. I've always wanted to make media in general, whether it's music or anything like that, graphic design, that type of stuff. And that's where How-To Hero came from. And essentially, the whole idea is to bring out the hero in everyone else. There's a hero inside of us all. A lot of us just need to kind of meet them. They need to engage with that hero, understand how that hero works, and bring it to life. So that's kind of the goal of the channel and kind of where things came from an empath standpoint. There's a lot more for me to talk about on this. If you guys are interested in this subject, let me know, because I do love talking about it. It can get, if I go through my whole story, it'll be a little bit deep, a little dark. There's light at the end, but I guess there's light throughout. But I think there's a lot of experiences that I had that really changed me and made me be the way I am now. And they're beneficial to talk about, not just from my own therapeutic type thing, but also it helps me to remove my mask, right? So if I talk about these very deep things that I haven't spoken with anybody really about, it's going to help me to just remove a lot of that ego, a lot of that mask, and it's going to help me be more authentic to myself. I'm not going to be so scared to be myself. So if you guys are interested in that, I can do that as well. Other than that, if you're an empath and you're having real problems, you're having real struggles and having a lot of trouble, Dr. Orloff has like an empath support group on Facebook. I highly recommend checking in there. They're not going to offer like psychiatric advice. So again, like, I'm not a doctor. She's a doctor, but it's a support group. It's meant to kind of help you through dealing with some of the problems that you're experiencing, but it's not necessarily there to, say, I have this narcissistic person and they're doing this to me and I feel like this. And it's more about, just helping you kind of be supported, but with other people that are going through some same things. So I would highly recommend doing that. And then always, if you have real mental health issues, seek advice from a professional. Don't just go onto online groups. Talk to people that care about you. Talk to healthcare professionals that can assist you. Sometimes we get so caught up in the empath traits and all these different type of things, we can forget that we still we can suffer from mental illness, right? Like for me, I have a tendency to be hypomanic. It's like a borderline personality disorder 2 type diagnosis. Now I don't have the diagnosis. This is just kind of me just kind of saying that I can be very manic. I'm usually up, but sometimes I can be pretty down. My down periods last very, very small amounts of time, but when I'm up, I'm almost like I'm so optimistic and I have so much ideas and so many things going on, and I want to act on all of them right away. So I'll start multiple things and I won't finish anything. And you know, it's good to be aware of these types of things. And you know, and I've been to therapy a bunch of different times, spoke with psychiatrists and things like that. So to try and get an understanding of myself, and it's been really helpful for me. It helped me to really put things into perspective. So I always recommend that to anyone. If you have any questions about anything that I've said, you know, shoot me something in the comments there. I love to talk about this stuff. I could talk about it all day. And other than that, I hope you enjoy your day. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, glorious day. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much, and take care.